this is Christian Buckley with Collab Talk, and we're sitting here in Building 92 at Microsoft. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Pouneh Kaufman. I work in team productivity. I'm responsible for Teams convergence, really making sure all our users, 200,000 plus users, are using Teams. Winning their hearts and minds. That's the big thing, really.
Yep.
I love your enthusiasm. Your enthusiasm just makes me so happy. I'm Karuana Gatimu. I'm with Microsoft Teams Engineering, and I'm accountable for adoption, all our documentation and education experiences in Microsoft Teams.
So this whole day is about, I mean, we can't get into what we've been talking about behind the scenes, although there's huge portions of today, I would say, that were like hearing about some of the deployment stats and that is public, and so I'm actually going to share some things out the slides once they're shared over with me. Mark shares the things, but some great information. One, it's nice just to get an update of the latest stats and where things are, and then just to have this opportunity to go in and so there's not been any controversy, there's not been any people standing up shaking their fist anger from the MVP community at Microsoft, which has been nice.
We talked about that.
There has been drama, I'm not exaggerating, there's been that.
And we talked about that in the hallway. That was a hallway conversation, how the whole culture of this MVP summit is different than it used to be. And it's representative of the switch that we've made from a Microsoft standpoint, really more into listening mode. I feel like we're better listeners. I feel like we share more. I feel like it's more of an actual partnership with our MVP community now. Certainly me coming on the inside, I get that sense from people. So it's different than it used to be, and I love it.
It is great. I say when Tieper came back on the SharePoint side, so that first MVP summit, and he opened up the summit by saying, look, we were thinking about how we would present to the MVPs, and we said, well, look, we've got a bunch of things. We don't know if these features will be ready or not. We're not sure what will go live. We're planning this big kickoff, which is the May 4th event a couple years back, and kind of the relaunch of SharePoint and the brand and things around that. But it says, or we could share everything that we're thinking about, talking about, whether or not we think it'll happen or not. Instead of being conservative of only the things that we know will happen, and let's discuss those things, let's tell you about things which we're thinking, which we might do a complete about phase and go a different direction on, but get feedback and just be open. And he said, we've decided, we're just going to be open. We're going to tell you what we're thinking. Some things that are baked, others that are not. And there's kind of a cheer that goes up in the room. But that really kind of set the theme that I felt last year and this year around that, where it's much more constructive and conversational, and where people could, it wasn't a matter of just angry, I'm experiencing this, and what are you going to do, kind of the, it's much more constructive. Here's the experience, that we had this in the deployments.
Yes.
And I shared things around some of the experiences with clients that I'm talking to that are have hybrid environments that are struggling with moving to Teams because they have Exchange on-prem with the hybrid connector into Teams, and questions about how that is architected, which I'll blog about, so I won't talk about here.
No, but that goes to your point, both of your points. I think when we came in here, even today, presenting about Teams, we didn't know what kind of story to tell, right? We were a little bit nervous about saying where we're at in the space, right? Because we had
you don't know what this audience is going to do.
We didn't know what the audience is, but what's nice to me is I kept telling them, you guys, this is our community that actually is looking for feedback, will support us, and the more honest we are and authentic we are about our journey, what we're doing, they can leverage that and move it. They're not going to be the ones, they'll be nicer than our users around this product, and they'll understand, right? Because ultimately we need to make this an amazing experience, and everybody has these challenges through this migration, so it's important we get it right. It's important we talk candidly about what the issues are, what our limitations are, and then how we can address them going forward, right? So that was key for us. This whole MVP summit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that sometimes technical people aren't fond of the phrase journey.
Yeah.
But there is nothing more relevant to this transformation than it is a journey. And that's why we talked about the different types of implementation strategies, and they're on our successwithteams.com site. People can find them out there. But it's very important that you allow the people in a company to get used to the Teams client, using chat, using core projects to move over, and have that be a phased rollout. We've talked about it before, we haven't always done it before,
Right.
and I think this time more than any other, it really does have to be a journey, because we are still releasing new features, and the process of the implementation of enterprise voice, for instance, in Teams, is a complicated one. We can't make that any simpler. We hear the feedback. So, other thing I just wanted to validate too is, you'll find more and more Microsoft employees, ourselves included, and folks in the community who really are learning how to go in listening mode.
Yeah.
And I talked about it a little bit in our session, but it's important to me that listening mode is important to me for two reasons. Number one, we won't be successful without the feedback of our customers and our community. But listening mode and getting feedback also means we need to respond to that feedback.
Right.
You can't talk into a black hole, right? It's our responsibility to share back with you what we think about that feedback, what we're
Right.
doing about it. That's why we have a user voice
Right.
community. I literally read every comment on our documentation.
I have to say though, in years
Yeah.
past, there's been kind of everybody sitting there with a can of soda in front of them, and there was the drinking game, and that's good feedback. That was it.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody up. It was a big deal the last couple of years. We did that.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody doing that this time.
No,
Other than-
I read that stuff. I really do. I
Yeah.
stay up late at night and I read
Yeah.
the comments on our Success
Yeah.
with Teams pages, and I take those comments to heart and I use it to make it better.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one. There's a whole team of people who are doing that
Right.
all throughout the product and throughout all of our other product relationships of the other parts that of Office 365.
Well, and that's actually something that's an important point. And I say this to customers, I say this to people that I write about and talked about, and how important it is that you're working for a little company or even a large enterprise. If you see that, hey, there's this critical feature that's missing, or I don't understand why this is gone, or I need this, and you go and you search it, you're just not finding it, you need to do a little bit of work. There are places that you can go and find it. Like first place I always go is to Microsoft Tech Community, and I go and search,
Yes.
is there a conversation around it there?
Yes.
And so that's the first place. Second place, and I go over to user voice. Is there something that's in there? Are people talking about it there? Is it in the comments, the notes around like a feature? And if it's missing from both of those places, please go into user voice and add it.
Please,
Yes.
And so my understanding, and I've been told, and we heard this a year ago, was that all it takes is 5 votes for someone at Microsoft to look at it.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So that's it. Now, what I heard yesterday, I think, or today, this morning, can't remember, it's all a blur, but somebody said that it's like the magic number for Microsoft. They must respond to, like, they'll look at it and respond with 5, as little as 5, but they'll actually go in and have like a technical response of anything that has 100 or more votes on it.
Yes.
I don't know if that's like the hard and fast rule, or
Well, there's recommendations, and I think every product group deals with it differently. Our product, because it is newer, we have a deep focus on that user voice feedback. And Supatra Rufo owns our community space. She happens to be out on maternity leave. She's creating life instead of creating features.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think that's important too.
Yeah.
But we have community members who manage our user voice, and they're, like I said, looking at everything, whether there's 5 votes or not, and definitely giving those responses.
And they're Microsoft is very active on tech community.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're
Absolutely.
looking for, so I think this was a cultural change. My understanding, my perspective from the outside, talking with some of the teams, like the SharePoint team, is where their jobs, it's in the job description, they must participate.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And as we go forward, I mean, the Microsoft Teams space is extremely active in the Microsoft technical community. We're about to launch some more work in the driving adoption community there with a broader launch of our Office 365 Champions program. And I will get to be there a lot, taking a bit of ownership around IT pros and real change managers and people who are power users and helping them understand what it means to be that kind of champion. But I think it's a privilege. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. Okay, that's fine. But enthusiasm is a management principle, and I do better at my job when I'm fully engaged in it. And I love being engaged in that community because people are interested and they're trying to solve real problems.
Yeah.
I'm a helper and a teacher by nature, and so getting to be involved in that community, yes, it's in my job description, it's part of the core of my job, but I would probably do it anyway, and actually that's how I got here, right, was being involved in community. So
well, and I should point out too that I believe it's the first Teams focused MVP, David Rosenthal, was the first Microsoft poach from the Team's MVP community.
That is correct.
He is now a Microsoft employee, started yesterday.
Yes, he is.
He went through the new employee orientation here.
All right.
I didn't realize he was based here. I thought he was somewhere on the East Coast.
He's here.
But anyways, he's here. But and I'm just like, well, great. I was asking him questions. I've got, doing some work over in the Gov sector.
Yeah.
And that's what his charter is. So he's helping bring teams into the Gov sector, which is awesome.
Which is
And he's fantastic. And he too has a deep commitment to community. It's one of the things that, our culture driven by Brian McDonald, really, I can't say enough about that. And it extends to our partnership that we have with CSE and the transformation we're trying to drive for our own, people in our own company. Is really about empowerment, and it's really about diversity, and it's about inclusion, and it's about really having a lot of great ideas that then make their way into the product. And sometimes there's tension about what's more important, what to release first or whatever, but that's a natural birthing process.
Exactly. No, I feel that over the last 8 months, our relationship has completely shifted, and that's because of Karuana and I really working together with it, getting the feedback that we need to, but bringing it to our group and showing how important it is to be collaborative together to get the best of these scenarios and get the best of the product. And I think we haven't had that in the past. I think it's really, the more I see it, it's been there, but it's coming.
Been spurts, but
it's just, it makes sense.
Well, so as your team was presenting, and I think we actually saw a great example of this, and we were talking about right after the session, is that you had most of them on one side of the room that were on the unified communications, the Skype side of the house, the telephony aspect of it, and then you had the SharePoint people over on the other side, the content collaboration people, and we each have our own thoughts of where the priority should be for features and things around that. It's great, and I found myself having little side conversations with the people sitting right around me. They're like, I don't understand why, I think I'm sitting in the wrong session. No, actually, what's great is you're hearing about, this is what Microsoft learned with these experiences. I think that there will be end user adoption takeaways from how the difficulties they had in deploying this. And then to understand some of the issues that are happening over on the telephony side. It's still not as important as the data as SharePoint side. I'm just going to be
I can't say that. I have to be both sides of the house. Look, let me tell you, if you can't make a phone call, it's kind of important. You're not going to collaborate if you can't meet.
I'm just poking the bear there. Because it's look, for a long time, and I know that we've had conversations about this. Is that when you think of collaboration, I go back to Satya's first his keynote at the partner conference when he became CEO.
Yes.
And he did a bunch of cool things there at that event. Julia White did the awesome Gig Jam demo that was at that event. But in his keynote around there, he talked about how important it was. That's when he announced internally the One Microsoft initiative and trying to get out of this silo-based battling business unit, need to look at it from the customer's perspective, end to end, what they're trying to do. It doesn't matter if you have the best feature if in the scenario it's broken at both ends.
That's absolutely true. And you know something, Teams was born of the new culture of Microsoft. I talk about that all the time because we are bringing together Azure, SharePoint, Exchange, modern groups, Power BI elements, and other components, our App Store capabilities, all of these things in one experience. And if that's not the antithesis of the product group shooting at each other and being siloed, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I don't believe that a product like Teams would have been born in the old Microsoft.
Right.
And I just think that this is an actual representation of the change of our culture. And when you think about, we were just talking about this online, when you think about the future of AI, right, and really making these experiences intelligent, intelligent, and how we're so committed to diversity, which is going to make those experiences more inclusive. Those are going to be unbiased algorithms. They're going to be,
but
you
it
know, this
but it
ability to
requires
empower
all the
people.
data. It requires
does.
all those systems, and it's and that's
Absolutely.
what Satya talked about. Is that it's this multi-sensory is the
Yes.
I believe how he phrased it, which is sometimes it's type, sometimes it's write, sometimes it's audio, sometimes it's video.
Exactly.
You know, other than all of these different data points, and you need to capture all of that. I will again look at it from that collaboration, knowledge management standpoint. Is that it's all of this other tacit knowledge, all of these other experiences that add the fullness, the richness to those experiences. You can have a document. Here's the way I always describe it. When I started at Pacific Bell in my mid-20s, I went in and I was taking over a number of processes from a gentleman who was retiring. So it was great my first week there, not knowing everybody. Got to go out a couple times to some really expensive lunches that were on the company for this guy. But got to know, but I got handed a binder. And so as I'm trying to learn and I'm looking, and I asked him a question, he's like, yeah, it's in the binder, this flow. And I open up and I look at this workflow, and I'm like, okay, and there's a bunch of bullets around it. I'm reading, trying to understand, like, oh my gosh,
Right.
there's like no information here. And so then I go back and I start asking about this. Well, let me ask you about this, and how does this transition, and what are the handoffs? And he starts telling me these stories and telling me these experiences around it. And I take all these notes, and I just, like, things like that, that's still common. It may not be a physical binder. It's like, oh, it's up on the intranet. That's just a modern day binder.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know? But you have all those things where all of this other knowledge that's out there, where now if it were all tied together, if I have all of the conversations, if I have videos and the meeting captures and all of the threaded discussions that were happening, that were all tied together, that as I go and search for something, this workflow to understand this business process and find all of this rich information, how much more empowered I am to go in and improve upon it and act upon it, and we're not reinvent the wheel around things.
That's so true, and what you're just describing there, to me, that's part of the adoption rhythm, actually, because you're talking about going from information to knowledge, but it's not until a person ingests that knowledge that you have real intelligence. There's a workflow there to that process as well. That most of it is lost, frankly, right?
True,
it's tribal
true.
knowledge, it's individual knowledge. It's just what lives in a person's mind. And when you think about, onboarding to Microsoft, coming in from the outside,
Yeah.
and how complicated that is, right? For
Absolutely.
users, I always use that scenario because people change roles here quite frequently. They move between product groups or teams. We get new people in from the outside, and onboarding to Microsoft is a very complicated process to get real intelligence from the knowledge that's available in the ecosystem. Otherwise, it's just a stream of information.
Right.
And that in and of itself,
And so we all talk about automation. We talk about all these different tools. It's like, but if you don't have the mechanisms to go and capture those things and to
Right.
correlate them, then you can't automate. You can't make it more intelligent.
And you can't change behavior, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what.
Right, you can't measure and look for the patterns
You
and
can't
go
look
do
for
that.
the patterns
Right.
because that's ultimately where we're driving towards. You
Right.
know, we have this growth mindset. We're looking to make these changes through all this information, rich data, but we can't do anything unless we know what it means, right? How do we change our user behavior?
You missed
How
the
do
old
we make it
conversation.
productive?
We were talking about Project Server and something because that was
Yeah.
my
Oh my
entry
gosh.
point into SharePoint was Project
I
Server.
love that. We love it. I love Project Server.
Oh, I did
that
love it
too.
when I wanted to kill someone. That was 2005.
That's a long time.
It's improved.
But
Yeah.
also, Project was the product that Brian McDonald created. And when Microsoft acquired Project, they got Brian McDonald, my CVP, who runs Microsoft Teams, as a part of that acquisition.
Oh,
and he's
wow.
been here this whole time. And I didn't know that, right, until
Yeah.
a while before I went to the product team. But the truth is that he did Project, he did significant work in Outlook and the Outlook mobile app, and now he's created Teams. So when you think about, one of the things that excites me about what we're doing right now is I get to learn from a man like this who, I didn't know that I was paying my mortgage on something that he had created when I was training people in Project.
Yeah.
But guess what? That's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
Him and Jeff Teeper basically paid for my houses and my divorce and things like that. But the truth is like that kind of innovation exists here and all throughout our ecosystem. If we can capture it and we can understand how it hits user behavior, and we can be committed to ethical AI and this more diverse and inclusive way of looking at this innovation. So, but that's of course one of my passions.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out? Where are you in the social world?
Oh yes, everywhere, absolutely.
Where are they not?
Right. Exactly. You can find me on LinkedIn. Please do connect with me or send me any questions. You can also follow my Twitter feed at Karuana. And of course, I have my show on YouTube, which is called Coffee in the Cloud, that does all sorts of business solution, IT pro stuff for Microsoft Teams, Office 365, and Azure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. There's not many Pounehs out there, so I think if you type up my name, you're gonna find it.
That's
no
the good thing
problem.
about both of us. Pouneh, Karuana, not a lot of us. You can find us.
I'm on Twitter, but I'm really active on LinkedIn. So.
Excellent. Well,
Sharing
thanks a lot
all
for
my
taking the time. And we're in this little fishbowl room. And
Right.
but it's great to see you both, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ready for happy hour.
Bye-bye.
Bye.